Hello there and welcome to Recon Paint Gaming. I'm Patrick. Today we're going to be discussing the Decloak action and the decloaking ability. There is a lot to unpack here, so we're just going to first start with the rules, and then we're going to go into where it can get complicated or, where there might be some confusion. Certain ships are able to take a cloak action or even start with the cloak token at the beginning of the game. While they have a cloak token next to them, it makes it very hard for them to hit, and then also they can use that cloak token to reposition, which makes them surprisingly hard to hit. When a ship performs a cloak action, it gains a cloak token, which looks like this. Cloak tokens are, in fact, blue for rules, so when you do have certain abilities or at the end of the turn, the token actually does not get removed naturally. There are abilities that may make it come off during the end phase or even during the planning phase, but if a ship is cloaked and it did that during its normal action phase, it stays on there until something removes it. It doesn't come off at the end phase like all the other tokens, such as focus or evades. So, while you are cloaked, you do get certain bonuses. While you have a cloak token next to you, you do get to add +2 to your normal agility. So, no matter what your agility is, if it's 1 or a 2, you get to add 2 to your standard roll. So, if your agility is 2, you then get to add another 2, making it 4 for when you defend. And you still get to add other modifiers, or if you have other cards that add to your defense as well. You can end up rolling 5, possibly even 6, depending if it's through a rock at range 3 as well. The other thing that happens when you are cloaked, you are disarmed. So you can put a disarm token next to you, or you can remember as well that you're cloaked, so therefore you cannot shoot or you can't attack that turn. Lastly, a ship cannot perform more than one cloak action, and also you cannot add or gain a second cloak token to your ship. And they do that because they don't want you to think that you can add more agility to your defense roll because you were able to gain 2 cloak tokens in some fashion. So only one token at a time. That is very much unlike the focus or evades where you can have multiple, but for cloak tokens, you can only have one. There is another phase in the game to where a cloak token can be very beneficial, not just when you're defending. During the systems phase, if you have a cloak token next to you, you can actually spend your cloak token to decloak, which allows you to reposition using a 2 straight maneuver template. And you can do so either going right, left, or even straight. These are considered moves, in which case you can't overlap obstacles or other ships, although you can fly or you can move over another ship. So if your template actually clears a ship and there is enough space for your ship to fit on the other side of that template, then you can make that move, just like if you would to barrel roll or boost. There's also certain circumstances to where a medium base or even a large base ship can have a cloak token next to it. And when that performs a decloak during the systems phase, instead of using a 2 straight, it uses a 1 straight. But rather than when a large or medium base ship barrel rolls and it uses the long edge of the one, it actually uses the full length of a 1 straight maneuver template to reposition either left, right, or straight. Finally, there are some little key components that you're going to want to remember for when you decloak and for when rules and triggers happen. When you do a decloak, it's not considered a maneuver. It's actually considered a move, which is different under the rules reference for when you're executing a maneuver that can consider or trigger different abilities. This is strictly a move, more like a barrel roll or boost. Also, you can decloak while stressed. So even if you have a stress token, if you have a cloak token next to you, you can still attempt to decloak, reposition your ship, and then remove the cloak token. Because again, spending this token and then repositioning with a decloak is not technically an action. The action was to cloak your ship, or if you started with one at the beginning of the game, you just gained that token, which won't be affected by stress. So remember, even if you're stressed, you can still decloak. Any abilities that allow you to gain or take another action after decloaking will be affected by that stress, so please keep that in mind. Another key point is when you do decloak, it's much like a boosted barrel roll in the fact that you have to declare which direction you're going to go. You must look at your ship, declare that you're decloaking, tell your opponent that you're going to be decloaking left, right, or straight, and then attempt to fit your ship in that fashion. If the ship does not fit while you're trying to decloak, that means that's a failure and your ship stays in the spot that it tried to decloak from the first place. However, the decloak or the cloak token does not get removed because you failed that attempt. So you're still cloaked, and that means you also suffer the effects or gain the effects of that cloak token, such as agility and being disarmed. And finally, there are certain ships that are going to be able to drop bombs and take the cloak action, which means they can decloak. The rules specifically say that when you attempt to decloak, and if you succeed, you then cannot drop a bomb. However, you can still drop a bomb and then decloak your ship because they don't want you to be able to reposition to the left, right, or forward and then being able to drop a bomb on your opponent. They considered that unfair, so just keep that in mind when you do have such triggers. For this demonstration, we are going to start with the most famous cloaking ship in X-Wing history, the TIE Phantom. It has a native cloak action on its actual action bar, and it even has other abilities that we'll go over in a minute for when it cloaks and decloaks. For now, Whisper is going to decloak during the systems phase. It then has to declare it is decloaking. The token stays there until it actually successfully performs the decloak ability. So it then declares either it's going to decloak to the right, to the left, or forwards. Just for this demonstration, we're going to pretend that it decided to decloak forwards. So you would put the template just as you would if you were executing a two forward, although we covered that it's not actually a two straight maneuver. We'll see that it doesn't fit, so then you return the ship to its original position. It doesn't bump, it doesn't go along the guides and then stop there. And then you leave the cloak token next to it because it failed that decloak. So remember that when you try to decloak and it fails, you don't lose the cloak action or token, but you also don't get to reposition your ship. So again, you still get the cloak token, you still get the added bonus of defense, but you don't get to reposition, and then hopefully whatever you put into your dial is still going to be a good enough maneuver for what you had planned. Back at the table, we're going to now perform the decloak properly. Whisper's going to choose to go to the left this time rather than straight, and we're going to end up there. Now, once you've actually completed your decloak, you then remove the cloak token. The TIE Phantom has a certain ability that says after you decloak, you may perform an evade action. At the start of the end phase, you may spend your evade token to gain a cloak action. So now that we've decloaked, all everyone is going to do is execute their maneuvers. Maybe the TIE Phantom executed a two bank, or maybe even did a two straight in order to use the rock as protection. It could have even started to run this way. Whatever it chose, it doesn't matter. If at the end phase it still has the evade token on them, they can choose to spend it and then put the cloak token back on them, granting them the extra added bonus, or they can continue decloaking into the next turn as well. The next ability we're going to show you is another TIE Phantom called Echo. That ability allows you to decloak using the two bank maneuver instead of the two straight. It is a much more nimble ship and still gives you that added bonus of the agility or, decloaking and repositioning, but with a two bank instead. And you get to decide which way the two bank is facing. So that's why we're going to cover this because it can get a little tricky, especially because Echo's abilities say you must use the two bank instead of the two straight. So with the TIE Phantom Whisper, you do get the two straight, so you know exactly which way you're going to be going during the systems phase when you decloak. Echo's a little bit harder to pilot, but also a little bit harder to predict because it can decloak to the right and the left using the two bank, either facing forwards or backwards, and also going out the front, either going left or going right. So we've replaced Whisper with Echo. This is another fan favorite because of its ability to reposition using the two bank. So in this case, we're going to decide to decloak. Don't remove the token until you have successfully decloaked, and then you declare whether you're going to do it to the right or to the left or straight. So let's try straight again, knowing that the two straight didn't fit here. However, if we do the two bank instead, because of Echo's ability saying we must use the two bank instead of the two straight, we now see that it fits. So because it was successful, we remove the cloak token, we add an evade because that's the ship's native ability, and now we have the TIE Phantom sitting in front of a Y-Wing, which is going to cause a lot of havoc. That could cause the A-Wing to bump, could cause the Hawk and also the Y-Wing, depending on all what they did, and then the TIE Phantom can perform a different maneuver or possibly do a K-turn and have everything in its sights. The next example I'm going to show again, because it says you must decloak using the two bank, and you can decloak to the right or to the left. You may say, all right, well, which way can I face it? The answer is both. So you can actually turn the two bank so that it's facing this way, giving Echo the ability to possibly come around this rock. Rather than the two straight we saw with Whisper, Echo is now a little bit more angled this way, which can free up more angles of the attack, or you can actually decide to be a little more cautious. You can turn the two bank this way and then decloak back a little bit. And now you can do either the one hard or you can possibly do it two hard, giving yourself a little bit more distance from your enemies. So make sure that you understand that just because it says a two bank doesn't mean you have to go a specific way with it. You can bank either a little bit backwards, a little bit forwards, and you can go two bank to the right or you can go two bank to the left. And same thing on the right side. You can even debank or try to decloak this way to see if that fits, which it doesn't, or you can try to sneak around behind them and decloak that way. So, as you can see, decloaking can be really powerful when you want to gain an upper hand on your opponent because it gives you a very wide range of where your ship can relocate before you actually execute your maneuver. And depending on what ship you take, it can actually make it to where it's even harder for you to predict, like Echo, to where you don't know where he's going to be. It could be behind you, it could be further away from you. So, you really have to anticipate that as well as their maneuver. But as a person that needs to be decloaking, you need to anticipate where your opponents are going to be if they have similar abilities. And you also need to make sure that you plan out if something fails or it didn't go as far as you thought, or, if it bumps something and you're like, shoot, oh, now I'm going to do the one hard and I know that's going to land on a rock. So don't think just because, oh man, I got the decloak, I have the upper hand, or shoot, they get to decloak this turn. It's going to be even harder. The pressure is also on the opponent just as much as it is on you itself. Now that we've covered the basics of Cloak, let's now go into some of the upgrades that you can take, especially if any one of your ships has an illicit slot, because you can take what's called a cloaking device. It allows you the cloak action. It comes with two charges that you can spend in order to perform those actions. And then when you do end up being cloaked, you have to check during the planning phase to see if you lose your cloak action or decloak. So it can get tricky. We're going to cover some of the rules or instances that get into it. And without further ado, let's head to the table. This example has Cad Bane with a cloak token starting because we have cloaking device. They took the cloaking action last turn. And instead of actually heading to the systems phase like you would think, Cloak Device has a rule that says at the start of the planning phase, roll one attack die on a focus result, decloak, or discard your cloak token. So during the planning phase, we actually have to roll a die and see if it in fact does get decloaked or removed. So because the focus came up, I can decide to decloak now, which might give information to my opponent to whether the resistant bomber is going to drop a bomb. Because if I decloak to the right or even straight, I might be able to avoid that bomb this turn. Or I can shoot just to get rid of it, which is very important. The opponent might have further information and then really decide to drop that bomb. So, the other thing that you can do is fail your decloak because when you decloak, you can choose either right, straight, or forward. If I go to the left, I'm not going to fit because I'm going to bump into this T70. So that's going to automatically fail, which I did check on the AMG forums to see what the rule was when you fail your automatic or forced decloak or lose your cloak token. So you can actually choose to decloak and fail it on purpose in order to keep your decloak token. And another important note, when you do roll that eyeball or focus and are forced to decloak and then you fail it, you do keep the cloak token, which means when the system phase comes up again, you should be able to try and decloak again. And you might wonder, well, if you didn't decloak during the planning phase, why would you then decloak during the systems phase? It's because it's later in the round. Different things might trigger to where it's going to leave you with more options later, or your opponent might not be able to predict your actual movement. And later on, you'll want to decloak then, or, something might have changed on the board to where you're like, shoot, okay, I really need to decloak because I need to attack this turn. So, as of right now, I would say if you try to decloak or if it forces you to decloak during the planning phase and it fails, you still get to decloak during the systems phase because decloaking isn't an action. And because you failed it, it doesn't mean you can't attempt it again because, again, it's not an action. My next ship is going to be the Sith Infiltrator, specifically with the Scimitar title. It allows the Scimitar to take a cloak ability or a action on its action bar that is red. However, it also has an ability to where it says setup. You may place one cloak token on this ship, which means you can start the game with a cloak token, and then later on for a red action, you can take a cloak ability as well. Now, there is a difference to when a medium and a large base ship decloak. It still gets the normal +2 defense when it is cloaked, but when it decloaks, it uses a one straight rather than the two straight. And you might be thinking, oh, okay, cool. It's like the barrel roll. No, instead of the one straight being with the long side against the ship, it actually gets to use the full length of a one straight. So we're going to show you a quick example below. Here we have our scimitar. It has a rock directly in front of it, enemies on both sides here. So it now gets to decide, because it did start with the token during setup and it hasn't decloaked yet, it is now going to decloak during the systems phase. So again, we leave the token there, and when we decide to decloak, we can choose to go left, straight, or to the right. In this case, the scimitar is going to decloak to the left. Now, normally a barrel roll would be with the long side against the ship. When decloaking, you actually use the full length of a one straight, and you get to decide if you want to line up in the front, all the way in the back, or all the way in the front. So you get to utilize the full range of the actual token as if it was a small base ship barrel rolling, which is pretty impressive. If the decloak completes, you remove the cloak token, and then you would execute your maneuver as normal, and you would get to shoot. So that's what you see, that a cloak token on a medium or a large base ship can be really impressive because of how much it can move one of those ships in either direction, or even launch it forward to get it into the action quicker. Of course, the drawback is it's a large base ship, and repositioning that much may not work, and you may find yourself to where something didn't fit, or flew too close to each other and you have no way of decloaking. That's your offense completely shut down. I know I've had lots of bad luck when I've flown the scimitar and tried to decloak and it failed. And I'm like, shoot, well, that just ruins my entire plans. My scimitar is now not in the position it needs to be. All my list is going to bump into the scimitar. My scimitar is going to go off into nowhere's land because of the maneuver I set to it. And now I'm really sunk. So be very careful when you do take these on the medium and large base ship, because again, unless you've practiced with it, unless you know exactly when you want to be decloaking, you're either going to be really successful and give your opponent a run for their money, or you're really going to hinder yourself for a few turns, because if you couldn't decloak that turn that you really needed to, it may be a few turns to where you don't get to decloak. And that's a problem, because you can't just remove the token unless something tells you that you can, like the Scums upgrade to where it's cloaking device, to where if you roll a focus, it just says you can remove it. You don't have to decloak. This stays on there, unfortunately, until you decloak. So again, be very careful, practice a lot, and make sure you plan out your attack. All right, last we're going to take a look at the TIE W Whisper modified ship, which was famous in the Star Wars movie with Kylo Ren at the helm, and then Ren ripped it right in half. But this ship has a very unique upgrade ability, which is the Sensor Scrambler. It is an upgrade that comes with the ship. It allows you to take a cloak token at setup, but it doesn't actually add the cloak action to your action bar, and it makes it to where once you're in range 3 of an enemy ship, you then have to decloak during the end phase. So we're going to go over the different scenarios to where that could happen, where it's going to differ or change the game for when you do end up in those situations. Because again, the reason I'm covering these is because with the cloaking device, it forces you to roll a die at the planning phase and may cause you to decloak or just remove the token, but it adds the action bar with the cloak. You have the scimitar that adds the action plus gives you one during the setup. And then we have now this sensor one to where it just lets you add the cloak token, but it doesn't actually give you the ability to cloak, and it can be removed because you're too close to a ship during a certain time of the game or match. So let's head to the table, see what that looks like. So in this example, we have Kylo Ren in the TIE Whisper modified. A Y-wing has executed its maneuver as well as Kylo did. And we have also the large shuttle over here. It is now the end phase of the turn, and Kylo made a slight error. The Y-wing came a little bit too fast. Kylo wasn't expecting it. or he tried to barrel roll to get out of range 3 of that Y Wing and has failed to do so. So during the end phase, if you are cloaked, in which he is, and there's an enemy ship at range 0 to 3, you must decloak. If you do and that cloak fails, lose 1 token. So you have to decloak no matter what. You can attempt to cloak either left or right. You know that's going to fail, and then that makes you remove the token anyways because it says you lose 1 token if you do and that decloak fails. The other issue is if you decide to go, well, I'll try to go straight, and then you may end up in front of a rock, just like here. So you really have to be careful when you are setting these things up. And that's why I was talking about it earlier. So you really want to be careful when you set these things up because each one of these interactions works differently. In this case, Kylo, did the 2 straight or whatever maneuver they did. They're like, shoot, that's definitely range 3. I'm going to barrel roll out of the way of that Y Wing so that I don't have to decloak immediately at the end phase. I really need that decloak this turn. And then all of a sudden you're like, shoot, it's still range 3. I have to decloak. Now I can choose to either decloak forwards. Either way, I lose that decloak, but now I'm stuck in front of a rock. I may have to have the shuttle coordinate to me so that I can barrel roll out of the way of that rock. Or I now have to fail that decloak to the left or right, and then that's just going to leave me where I was. And you do get the bonus for still being cloaked during the turn for when the Y Wing shoots at you, but it's going to leave you in a very bad way, which is why I went through all of these different types of decloak situations because every situation requires a decloak at a different point in the game, which is going to cause different things to trigger or different things to happen. And it might cause you to do something that you don't intend to do, especially if you have a ship that can decloak and go over rocks or ignore rocks for that turn because it can make you kind of invincible and a really good ship for that turn to where you're like, all right, I'm gonna decloak over this rock and they didn't expect that and I'm gonna I don't get damage for that, so here I come. Or it's going to be to where you're like, shoot, I can decloak over rocks and now I'm sitting on top of one and I'm gonna bump myself and now I'm stuck on the rock. Oh god, no. So make sure you really pay attention because I have not mastered this ability. Every time I take a ship with cloak and think it's going to give me an extra advantage, I always end up screwing myself up or not anticipating the amount of space it's going to give me or not leave enough space. So it is very interesting. Of course, when someone else takes it against me, that's when they know exactly how to use it. I'll try to shoot at them. They get the added bonuses for the defense, and then they're decloaking the next turn, and I can't anticipate where they're going to be because I would have gone this way, but they have gone that way, and so on and so forth. So we really hope this video helps you in your journey to unlock some new ships because some of these ships are viable right now. You can take them. Others, like the TIE Phantom, is extended only. Hopefully, eventually, it will get into standard. Or if you're already playing extended, you might see this ship and play against it. In which case, good luck to you. They are really tough ships, especially in a player or in the hands of a player that really knows how to use them. So let us know what you think below. Please leave a comment. Let us know if we made any errors so that when people see them, that they can correct them. Or if you have an opinion on something, or if you really have a great idea on how you can fight against or with the cloak. And of course, as always, click the like button, click subscribe, check out reconpaintgaming.com for all of our other social media accounts and information. And of course, go check out recontokens.com. Thank you again and have a good one.